What's up everyone, welcome back to our last video in this tutorial series. Today we are going to consolidate all three previously written query into one super query, and then we'll talk about how to create a dashboard from all these queries that we've written, then talk about how to do storytelling with these raw data points. If you're looking for a book recommendation on how beautiful the marriage between data and storytelling can be, go read Factfulness, where Hans Rosling really was amazing at using data to tell stories. I don't know why I'm showing you this, but it's truly a beautiful book. Definitely recommend. So back to building our query. Without further ado, let's get started on building our last query. So I will go to Dune.com per usual. Today I will actually so I need all three queries. I will just open them 1, 2, and 3. Then I will go start a new query and go to Dune SQL, starting our usual commenting block. What we're doing today is putting all the point metrics we have built so far into one query. Okay, here we've got decentralization category, right, which is this one, and then we've got activeness and usage, which is this one, and then we've got TVL and diversification, TVL and diversification, which is this one, and we can just consolidate them. We already know what we have from each of them. To start our query, same per usual, we're gonna do select from. What are we selecting from? We know we need all three of these queries, right? So let's just get them ready to go. So I want the query 20 something, so this would be my TVL and diversification query. Then the other query that I have is activeness and usage. This would be my activeness and usage query. That last one would be my decentralization, which is this one. So this would be decentralization query. Here we're going to do left join anchored on the TVL and diversification metrics query. What are we doing the left join on? We're joining it on the safe addresses, right? So TVL div.safe address is equal to the active and usage dot safe address. Oops, forgot to give an on. Same thing on TVL.safe address is equal to the decentralization.safe address. Okay, then here going to apply one more filter, because later on we tried to create visualizations, and one of the visualization is a scatter plot. So you're going to see a lot of bubbles, each bubble representing a safe. Just going to do a little bit more filter so we can derive more meaning from the visualization. So going to say where TVL is greater than $1,000. So we want to have safes that have at least $1,000 in their account, or maybe it's not so meaningfully wealthy, but at least it has some liquidity in the past few months. So where the active and usage is dot total prev and month USD volume is greater than $1,000. So either it has meaningful balance in the account, or it has had meaningful liquidity in the past few months. Then we will want to take into consideration of the safe. So now let's get the columns that we want from these previous queries. So first I want the safe address. Next, want to place a placeholder for a link to the safe address itself. Now let's look at the activeness and usage side of things. And to do that, let's go to the original query and look at what columns we've had from there. So we want to get the activeness or the frequency and the volume. Let's do that. Actually, let's also throw in the percent volume stablecoin. Okay, so we will do that to begin with. Then we are going to be adjusting for them a little bit because we're doing a joining with other queries. So it's very possible that for this particular safe address, the value would be null. In that case, we want the value to be 0. So we're just gonna apply a coalesce for all of them. This way, instead of null value, we'll see 0 value. Now is the part where we can have a little bit of fun and categorize things. Here we have the activeness or the frequency, and we have the volume. Wouldn't it be nice if we can put some meaning to how active these are? Let's say if it's like less than 2 transactions per month, then it's like very slow. Then if it's more than 15, 20 transactions, it's a lot. We can then give it a name. Here we've done the work to look at the percentile of each of the metrics to come up with a cutoff. We'll cover how to do that in a separate tutorial. But here, just take the general idea. We can come up with interesting categories and come up with cutoffs for each of these categories so that when we look at these saves and we conduct analysis, we can derive more meaning, because sometimes numbers, they don't really mean anything to us as humans. When we label it with a category, then all of a sudden it has meaning. All that is to say, we are going to create some category labels and then we can have some fun in the process. Going to switch the order slightly. With that, we're gonna start a case statement. So end as, and this will be our average monthly num transactions category. Like I said, we've done the work to find out the threshold. We're gonna say that if this particular metric is less than or equal to 2, then we're gonna call it hands-off category in terms of activeness. Then when this is in between 2 and 15, so less than 15, then we are going to call it slow and steady because it does do something, but not so frequently. Else we're going to call it busy bees because it seems very active in terms of the average monthly number of transactions. Okay, so that is that category. And then we can also have fun with the total liquidity as well. Same idea. We've done the work to look at the threshold that we think makes sense, and then we had fun come up with the label name for each of the categories. So all we need to do here is do a case and then end as total prev volume category. And when the prev month volume is less than or equal to $200,000, then we're gonna call them pendant pinchers. So that means they don't have a lot of liquidity going through. Else, when this number is less than $2 million, so $2 million, then they're the in-between, so they're the smart savers. So they have a medium-sized amount of liquidity. Else, they are called the Midas touch, because they just, everything they touch will become gold. So there's a lot of liquidity that passes through the safe, okay? So that's the total prev month USD volume category. Moving on to the next category, or the next bucket of metric, we're going to look at the TVL and then diversification side of things. Let's just see what we have from the diversification side of things. Let's just copy paste these to see how many of them we would want. Okay, so definitely want to keep the TVL. So per usual, going to apply coalesce function because We're joining different queries, so it's very possible that this particular metric could be null, and in that case, we want it to be 0. Also, we want to round this up. This is also for visualization a little bit later. So we want to round this up to have 2 decimal point. Then TVL is definitely something that we can play on, coming up with different category and label it. So we definitely did that. Case and as, this is TVL category. Again, we did the percentile study previously to come up with these threshold. We had the goal of coming up with 3 buckets or categories, and then we look at the data. So case when coalesce of the TVL 0. So when the TVL is less than or equal to $100,000, then we're gonna call it struggling. Okay, so that means that the safe's balance or wealth is really struggling, has less than $100,000. Else, when TVL is less than or equal to $1 million, 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, then we're gonna call them balling on a budget. So they're the in between. They have some money, but they're not very wealthy. Else, they are wealthy, so they are anything above $1 million. They are living the dream. So that's the TVL category. Let's keep going. With the stablecoin TVL, we're going to just take that, and then we're going to call it as stablecoin TVL. You don't have to have as, but let's just add the as, and then same thing. Coalesce non-stable coin as non-stable coin. Okay, and then for the percent, we are going to also do the same thing as the percent TVL stable coin. Now we're at the HHA side of things. Per usual, we can do this, and then if it's null, then we're gonna give it 0 just to signify it doesn't have anything. Same thing. Weighted average volatility, if it's null, we're gonna give it 0. And then we want to also, the top end, asset concentration ratio. Same thing here. Let's have some fun with the HHI, okay? So case and as HHI category. All right, so here the category threshold are based on the standard threshold for HHI. So anything less than 1500 is pretty diversified. We're a competitive market, and then anything above 2500 is considered very monopolized or very concentrated market. So we're gonna just use the same threshold. So coalesce on the HHI, if it's less than 1500, then it's diversified. Then if it's less than 2500, then it's considered a medium, so you're working on it. And else you are considered concentrated. So the lower the better. When you have a high HHI, you're actually not diversified. Now I'm realizing there should be a number of assets right here. Okay, so let's put that on as well. Okay, then we can also work on labeling the weighted average volatility. So case and as. Okay, instead of the super long name, let's just call it volatility category. Then we're gonna be case when. So when this thing, so when it's less than 1, then it's so not volatile. So we're gonna call it serene sailboat. Else, when the volatility metric is less than 10, then it's still not that bad, but it's the in-between. We're gonna call it the bumpy bus. Then else it's really bad, so we're gonna call this the roller coaster. Okay, so that is it for our volatility category. Now let's move on to the decentralization category. Coming here, these are our decentralization metrics. So definitely want the number of owners. Okay, so going to take that. Then we want to do the threshold ratio as well. So we will do that. And then we want to, for funds, understand the day since creation. So how old this save wallet is. That is all our parameters. Before we run, let's go back to revisit how do we create a link. I definitely don't remember how to do it at the top of my head, but I have other queries where we've done it. 12 days of Dune. I found this day 5 query, going to take this as an example. Actually, going to first do the left join on this. So here, this query allows us to make result text linkable. So we're gonna just do that. And then we need this part as well. So here, we're gonna go back to our placeholder. So concat href that instead of a transaction, we're gonna do address. And then instead of the example hash, we are going to do the save address. And then we must put the prefix because all the tables that or the query tables that we have save address. So it cannot be ambiguous. So that's how we can link an address to the Etherscan address page. When you click on it, feels like we're ready. So let's go run it. Mistake. What is our mistake? Mismatch. Oh, okay, because it's duplicating this. Okay, so this would be a safe address, clickable. That should work. Case when, oh, oops. Case when then else. So line 39, let's go there. So when then else. Okay, a bunch of coalesce statements that are not finished. So coalesce 0, coalesce 0, coalesce 0, and then give it a run. Okay, so on line 23, Midas touch cannot be resolved. Okay, so here we're doing a double quotation, cannot do that. Can only do a single quotation. So let's save and run. All right, looks like we have some result. We have some clickable save addresses as we expected, then different categories. Okay, this looks nice. Let's create some visualizations. Let's start with table visualizations. So to create a table visualization, we can do new visualization, table, add visualization. Okay, so here we would like to hide the save address that's not clickable. So we click hide column. And then here we want to rename the column to be save wallet. And next up, again, just renaming this to be more readable. So we want to call it activeness category. Then here we want to call this the average number of transactions, AVG number transactions. And then we want to format it a little differently. We want to do 0.0. That way it doesn't give too many decimals, so it's prettier. Next up, for total prevent month number transaction, we are going to hide this column. And for the prevent month volume category, we are going to call this the volume category. Okay, so volume category. Then we've got the total volume coming up. Here we're going to call this the USD volume, or we said liquidity in the very beginning of this tutorial series. Now we're going to format it nice with $, and then we're going to do 0.0a. Let's see. Okay, so here it just makes it look a lot nicer. Okay, you get the idea. Basically, through these customization, we can make a table prettier, hide a column, format it differently. So the end result is once you finish creating a pretty formatted table, you can add that table as a visualization to a dashboard. So here we have our Safe Wallet point analysis dashboard, and we've added the dashboard we curated from the other side to this dashboard, right? So it's pretty easy. You just do add dashboard and then find the dashboard that you want to add. If you want to add it, then you can add it. And yeah, that's how you create a table visualization. So using the same dashboard, if we scroll down, let's talk about creating these type of graphs and making visualization interpretation from these graphs. So here we've got the HHI in metric on the x-axis and the TVL the total value locked metric on the y-axis, and then the third dimension, which are represented by the color of the bubble and the size of the bubble, are the volume categories. So here you can play around with it. Basically, the bigger the bubble, the more total volume locked there is for the safe, and each of the bubble represent a safe that we have seen in that table. Here we can observe a pattern. So there are a lot of safes with very little total value locked right now. Here we can see a lot of safes have less than $1 in their total value locked, but they are somehow the Midas touch category of volume. That means more than 2 billion of volume has passed through the safe in the past 3 months. That's a lot. So what does that mean? Well, how can this be very little wealth or balance right now, but so much volume has passed through? So one theory is that these safes are actually liquidating. Yes, in terms of volume, they have nothing. They have even less than $1, but in terms of liquidity, they have a lot. So they must have been liquidating in the past few months so that their liquidity where the volume is huge, but the current balance is so little. If you click on this particular address that we were able to find, you can see that the balance is nothing. However, if you click on this link, so ending in C31D, right, you can see that C31D transferred out more than $5 million of USDC. So our theory about these type of safes having low balance or low total value locked, but high liquidity being in the Midas touch category are safes that were liquidating have some evidence. What's the point of talking about this? This is to show you that when you play with visualization on these raw data points that you gathered, it can lead you to having interesting insight. I did not just happen to have created this one chart and then I discovered this interesting thing. I play with it, I explore the data, and eventually I found something interesting like this one. So while it was important to do all the hard work of writing the SQL query, coming up with metrics, it's equally important, if not more important, to do the next stage, to draw interesting and useful insights from these raw data points that you've worked so hard. That's the takeaway that I want you to have. Yes, it is a lot of work to get all the queries, all the data working, but then also you need to put work into the other side of it, into coming up with interesting visualizations and even writing these interpretations so that your audience can understand exactly what you're trying to get across. So now let's click into this visualization. We can take a look at how it was created. It's actually pretty easy. Really, the hard part was writing the query, and here you're just exploring by creating simple graphs. So the x-axis we said was HHI, the y-axis was the total value locked, and then we said the third dimension we're using volume. So we're grouping by the total value in the Prep month category, so that's why you can see these 3 categories here on the screen, and then the circle radius, so how big these circles are dictated by the total volume. So the bigger the volume, the bigger the circles. That's how we created these bubble charts or the scatter plot. Pretty easy. If you're not familiar, you can customize this. Here we are applying logarithmic. Why are we doing that? Because if you don't, then everything shrinks into this one line. It doesn't make any sense. But then if we click on the logarithmic, then all of a sudden it makes a lot more sense. And then the same thing we've seen previously, we can format it differently to make it prettier. And then we can color each of the categories. Here, we're customizing the category colors. And then we can also name the series differently to make it, to make it more readable. None of this is hard things to do, but just takes a little bit of effort for your audience. Before we go, just want to quickly cover how do we create these type of pie chart for each of the category that we've come up with. So for example, the TVL category, we've got struggling, we've got bowling on a budget, and we've got living the dream. We want to see how is the TVL distributed among all the safes. And then we also want to see the number of safes that are in each of the category. And then also to top it up with this table so we can see exactly, oh, the struggling category, the cutoff is 100,000. And then the living the dream category, the cutoff is greater than $1 million. And then we can actually see the numbers that we care about. This is the difficult part. It's not like writing a query. You can just be like, hey, You can do a Windows function, you can do a group by function. Although in a way it's similar, you're doing practices to see how you can come up with visualizations that is helpful. So here we came up with these categories, but we want to make these categories even more meaningful. So this is one way we can make it meaningful. Here we can see, hey, actually 91 or 92% of the wealth belonging to the top category of the TVL category. However, only 9.4%, they only constitute to 9.4, like, so less than 10% of the save. So now all of a sudden we get a narrative, which makes sense. A lot of wealth are concentrated to the top wealthy people. Very similar to what we have in real life in terms of individuals. Similarly, okay, so let's look at the volume distribution. So here we want to look at how the volume is distributed in terms of the number of saves, how the volume is distributed. Again, the majority of volume have passed through the Midas touch type of category, almost 90%, although they only constitute to be less than 10% of the saves. Scrolling down in terms of activeness, okay, literally 90% of the transactions are done by these busy bees. However, at the same time, they only constitute to be less than 10% of the saves population that we're looking at. Why it was so easy for us to interpret it here. The color really helps. First, we come up with categories, and then next, for each of the category, we give it a distinct color that is also easy on the eye, is differentiable, right? Differentiating. So living the dream, we know it's the shade of blue, and then immediately we can see the same shade of blue on this pie chart, what it is. Same thing, purple, the same shade of purple. So when you come to this part of the visualization, it's about ideating, but after ideating, it's about how to best present it in a way that's most digestible to your audience. And then making it easily digestible to your audience is the key here. One more thing to say in this dashboard, another thing we're doing here is we're allowing you to zoom in on a particular save. So taking this default save address, we can see, hey, in this particular save, what are the assets that make up this save? We can see in the save, there's some ETH, there's some DAI, and there's some wrapped BTC, and then what's the current balance of these tokens in the save. Why? Because here we have the overall metrics for each of the save. But after all, one could be curious to look at an individual save. So here we're just thinking, hey, our audience might want that. So we're designing the dashboard so that it's more consumable to our consumers. Lastly, in the same vein of thought, it might be a lot of work. You're like, cool, like I'm done with all the core writing, whatever, like I don't want to do this. But it's actually important to the audience to set the stage, to help them understand what you're building here. It's the same thing as daily communication. You can't just barge in and start dumping whatever is on your mind. You have to set the stage, make sure each other understand each other, and then go into what you're actually going to talk about. When you are done with gathering the data, and then when you're ready to create a piece of analysis, just keep this in mind that getting data is step one. And the next step about making sense of the data, storytelling with the data, is equally important, if not more important, in delivering useful analysis. With that, we are done with the point-in-time analysis with safe wallets. Yay! Okay, not so fast. We gotta talk about the homework and next steps, but I will see you on those slides. Wow, that was a lot that we've just covered, that we've just gone through together. Whether you've done this in multiple days or through a binge session, that was just a lot. If you feel lost, don't panic, don't worry. Like anything else, through practice and repetition, be patient with yourself, you will get it. And definitely feel free to reach out to me or anyone else on the community team if you feel stuck doing something. So now we've arrived at the point where we have an opportunity to claim an on-chain proof of learning. So a proof for all the hard work that you've done. A certificate you can earn and display as an NFT in your wallet. What's that you say? You're so excited and ready to tackle this homework assignment and earn the NFT? All right, let's go. Okay, so this is the detail for the homework question. So trading Nouns DAO Treasury as a portfolio. What is its portfolio variance? If you follow this link, this is a forkable link for the homework. We've basically tried to explain what is portfolio variance, give you hints and resources, then In the same fashion, before we build our queries, we always write down the logical steps, what we need to do. Same thing we also listed out here. And then for each of the part, we actually have lines that you can fill in and comment out, right? So with this, we're expecting you to find an address for the particular noun style, and you can fill in the address for the noun style's treasury. Also, for each of the part, we have left trails for you to fill in the gaps in between. Then we also have QA times where you should uncomment out this particular line when you're at here. And then we are going to tell you like what you should be expecting for this particular homework question, so you know you're on the right track. All the details is in the forkable query. We'll leave the link in the description below. Follow the steps to fill in the unfinished part of the query. Use the QA checkpoint to uncomment and run to check how you're doing. When you're done, click on this link to submit your answer. And this is the part where I am reminded to give you a unique session code. So the unique session code, which you will need when you submit the type form for your answer, is YTSP. Okay, YTSP. Once you get the correct answer, we'll issue you this POAP here that you see. Okay, so next up, obviously, complete the assignment and earn your on-chain proof of learning. Then you can level up your SQL skill through this Web3 SQL weekly program that my coworker Andrew is running. You can watch 12 Days of Dune and become a DEX analytics expert. Then you can watch Arcana to learn real-world applications of Web3 analytics. Obviously, get paid while learning to do Web3 data. This link will get you to a bunch of bounties that are available. Then we will see you in the next video series. All right? Congratulations! And now go do the homework and earn yourself this proof of learning NFT. Woohoo! Next time, I'm going to have some exit stage music. Leave me a comment or at me on Twitter about what type of music you want in this part, in the congratulations exit stage part. Okay? See you in the next video. Bye!